As the state engineer, Scott Verhines is in charge of the appropriation and distribution of all surface and groundwater in the state. Within his office is the Interstate Stream Commission, and Director Esteban Lopez oversees protection, conservation, and development of New Mexico's waters. We talked to them about what the state is doing to preserve this vital resource.
Esteban Lopez and Scott Verhines, thank you so much for being with us here today. We heard the news recently that the only well serving the town of Magdalena ran dry. And with the historic drought that we've been seeing lately, is this something we can expect to see more often, villages running out of water?
If communities haven't done the necessary planning to kind of monitor the situation and deepen wells or find alternative sources of supply, then there may be additional shortages of water. But it's not something that has to happen. If people do the necessary planning, there's certainly plenty of opportunity to avoid it.
What's the lesson for other small communities that they can take away from that situation?
The lesson is don't have all your eggs in one basket and do a better job of operating and maintaining your system. And one of the things, looking back on the Magdalena situation, with some technical support to them in being able to go out and look at that well on a more continual basis, then they could have identified that they had a problem coming before it got there. So the lesson for them is let's work with communities, particularly small rural communities that don't have the staff like the big cities do, to help them develop a program to understand what they're going to get into before they get there.
I like your eggs in basket analogy. You know, we've been talking about how many wells have been drilled lately, especially because with less water in the rivers, people say, oh, well, we'll just drill this well. Is this a mistake to think of these as different baskets in every case, Esteban?
You know, the water supply, in most instances, the groundwater supply, if there's a nearby river, it's connected to that river system, and we have to manage those two water sources conjunctively. We can't assume that drilling a well isn't going to have an impact on a river, and we can't assume that pulling water out of the river isn't going to draw on the same source as well.
Can we do a better job of restricting wells or managing the number of wells being drawn, especially in the Rio Grande?
Actually, the legislature dealt with this to a certain degree during this session that just ended on what they called, it was sort of called the anti-double dipping bill that was introduced by Senator Wirth. There were two of those, and what it did was preclude, if you were a farmer within the middle Rio Grande area and you had severed your water rights from that land, you had sold them to somebody else, kept the land but sold the water rights for some other purpose, then you couldn't allow a developer now to come back in, develop that piece of land, and drill individual domestic wells back into that same water source.
What about agriculture? Do we need to look at conservation or adjusting the number of wells used for agriculture?
Agriculture has certainly been heavily hit by, we're entering our third year of very significant drought in New Mexico right now. So they're having to adapt, and the way they're adapting generally is either by groundwater use, where there used to be a surface water delivery system. Elephant Butte Irrigation District in the lower end of the lower Rio Grande is a good example of that. There's not much surface water in the river this year, so they're making up the differences by planting less, consolidating what their farming operation would look like, using groundwater to make up the difference, and having some surface water available to them. For example, EBID, the district down there, in a full supply year, they could get 4.5 feet of water per acre. This year, they're looking at 4 inches of water per acre. So it's a very significant impact on surface water, and they're having to adapt in how they plant and what they keep and what they don't keep in that given year.
But again, if they opt to drill some wells, we still have to manage that as if it's coming out of the overall supply available. It's not an additional amount of water that's available to them. It's just water that's coming from a different source. They're getting it from the ground as opposed to from the stream system.
Thinking about agriculture and cattle grazing, the things that we use our land for, a lot of folks are concerned about fracking and the potential water contamination of that. We just saw Mora County ban fracking up there. Is this something that concerns you, the potential for water pollution, Esteban?
You know, I think that anything that we do that has the potential for contaminating water supplies certainly has a potential for reducing our available usable water. Having said that, I think there's probably ways of regulating fracking activities such that we can probably figure out whether that's happening and restrict it if necessary. I think that it shouldn't be just a blanket assumption that it's going to happen.
If the companies won't tell us what chemicals they're using in that process, how can we effectively protect the water or react to that use of it?
Well, I think that usually we can, for most water uses, there's a whole. Let's say potable water uses. The Environment Department regulates for a whole host of possible contaminants. So if there are contaminants that are getting into the water system, they're probably gonna find out what they are, whether we're told about them or not.
But by the time they get in there and they're found, isn't it too late?
It is. Well, it is and it's not. I mean, you can certainly clean them up, but you want to prevent that if at all possible. I think part of the thing is you don't want to be injecting in a horizon, in a aquifer that's very near the area where you're taking your drinking water supplies from. It has to be regulated in my mind. You have to make sure that you preserve the quality of the water that people are going to be relying on. But I think that can be done, and oftentimes the fracking is going on well below those zones, and you just have to monitor things to assure yourself that you're not introducing the water into the freshwater zones. And oftentimes you can do that by even just monitoring the pressures in those zones.
Scott, can you assure us that fracking isn't going to pollute? Mora is one of those areas where they depend on well water, and if they lose it, they've lost everything.
I think we need to be clear that we're not the regulators for water quality in New Mexico. So the combination of the New Mexico Environment Department and the Oil Conservation Division, which is part of Energy, Minerals, and Natural Resources, are the regulators of fracking activities, produced water activities in the state. So, but we've been doing fracking in New Mexico. I actually got to go out and watch my first fracking job done in 1982, growing up in southeastern New Mexico. The technologies are really robust. They've been in place a long time. We've gotten a lot smarter and better about how we do that. And to piggyback on what Director Lopez just said, these are activities that are taking place very deep, and a lot of the regulation is in ensuring that you don't have communication between those deeper aquifers and the shallower, more potable water aquifers. That's where a lot of the activity is taking place. We are dealing more with the water supply regulation aspects of that, ensuring that if, take for example, a farmer decides that I could make some money by selling water to the oil and gas industry for fracking, that what they are carving off of their water rights in order to do that is within state statute, and that's a lot of our activities on a daily basis.
If we need more water, won't we be going deeper in some cases looking for it?
That's a big part of the discussion that we're having around the state right now. What we're calling, and will come out on the state water plan, is recoverable water. We're calling several different types of water supplies as being recoverable. One of those is brackish water. It is generally understood that we have significant amounts of highly saline water deeper in New Mexico, and particularly in the oil and gas areas. They've been drilling through those aquifers for many, many years, so they know where it is, what the quality of it is, but we think there's a lot more around New Mexico. But we still have those same things that we need to be dealing with. Do you potentially contaminate a shallow source by bringing a brackish water source up through it? But there's a lot of technology, a lot of research being done on how to develop brackish water aquifers. The other one is produced water. So oil and gas generates a lot of water from producing oil. So for example, 1 barrel of oil may generate 3 barrels worth of water. how do we recover that water so that water can be used rather than just being re-injected? Once you get it to the surface, can we find ways to clean it up and reuse it? The other recoverable water option, which a lot of communities around New Mexico are starting to think more about, is effluent reuse. So you have a water supply.
Gray water?
It's a little different critter than gray water. So, and I can describe, gray water is one of those that we're talking about. So you take water and you run it through a community water system, and then it ends up in the wastewater treatment plant. That gets cleaned up and generally put back in the river that is used downstream by the next community. And that happens all over the world, all over the United States. But because that's a fairly constant assured supply, roughly 50% of what comes into the community leaves the community, then Cloudcroft, as an example, is doing the first what they call indirect potable reuse project in the state, where they are additionally treating that water, blending it with fresh water supplies, and it becomes part of the water supply again. That's another element of recoverable water that we're seeing a lot of New Mexico communities starting to think about now.
Talking about surface water, Esteban, I want to get to the Gila. You know, a lot of folks in southern New Mexico are excited about how the Gila is a wild river. Hasn't your office advocated a plan to do a little bit more human intervention in the Gila?
New Mexico historically had, under some previous Supreme Court decisions, had a right to develop potentially up to 18,000 acre-feet of additional water supply in the Gila River, if we could demonstrate that there was no impairment to downstream users. That hadn't been done. When Arizona began negotiating for its Indian water rights settlements, they started looking at potentially using some of what New Mexico had as a potential future use.
So it's water we could use but we're not using.
Yes. If we take some water, we'll only take it during peak flows, and we'll not take the entire peak. We'll just take a small amount out of those peak flows. So the Gila is prone to some big flashy floods that often create a lot of destruction on and around rivers and roadways and farmlands and so forth.
But some argue it's good for the environment too.
It is. You know, these floods move things around in the natural system. We're talking about taking water at those peak floods, but not so much that it prevents the river from doing some of this rearrangement of the system. So we're talking about taking very little of that water. So
is it worth the expense? Because it would be quite expensive, wouldn't it?
Well, I'm getting to that. So what we did in that settlement was preserve our right to develop up to 14,000 acre-feet of water, which in the grand scheme of things is not a lot of water, but if you look at the Gila system itself and Gila in New Mexico, that's about a 50% increase of the amount of water that we're currently taking out of the Gila system. We also got an opportunity to get some federal funds to do that, anywhere from $66 million up to potentially up $128 million in 2004 dollars. So it's actually escalating over time. There's a great deal of presumption as to what exactly we intend to do. We haven't yet decided that water should be taken out of the river, but it's certainly it's a possibility, and it's one that I think we'd be wise to consider, given how little water New Mexico has generally. Further, I mean, we often hear about it's a wild and unrestricted river. Well, there are diversions on the Gila today. And there could be additional diversions on the Gila, particularly given the kind of constraints that were negotiated into the settlement, that will still keep it a wild and unrestrained river. We're not talking about building a dam on the main stem of the Gila. There's some people that would like us to, but practically speaking, I don't think that is realistic. But there's a number of ways that you could develop some of this water and actually have ecological benefits as well. So I think, you know, people would be wise to just keep an open mind about this whole process. New Mexico needs water. The environment needs water. I think we can address all of those things.
If we need more water, Scott, where should we look first?
So we should look first at conserving what we have. I think the most immediate way to have additional supply, particularly in public water supplies, is with aggressive conservation. And those communities that are already on top of that, you can see are doing fairly well at getting through the drought they were.
Who gets a gold star there?
City of Santa Fe, good example. The Albuquerque-Bernalillo County Water Utility Authority as a good example. We have lots of good examples, but those are certainly gold stars.
Esteban, are we not charging, and I know you're not the one charging for water, but are our water authorities not charging enough for water?
That's really a complex question.
Well, we only have a little time.
You know, most of our water authorities try and charge or try and charge their set up their water rights to recover the cost of their investment. Oftentimes, they haven't really had to invest a lot in developing the water rights. It was something that was just done historically, and therefore, for all intents and purposes, that aspect of the equation is essentially free. As I think most of your listeners would agree, that water is an incredibly important and valuable resource. It might be appropriate to charge more for that water and use that money for managing and developing additional water supplies. But that is obviously a politically hot question. It's not something that utilities generally do. Generally, they recover the costs of their wells, of their pipes, of their tanks, and things of that nature, their treatment equipment. Only if they have to go out and buy water rights do they actually try and recover the cost of those water rights.
And lastly, about conservation, we all know we're supposed to be doing it and we are demanding that everybody do more, but I want to know, what are you doing at home, Scott, to conserve water?
We have recently completely xeriscaped the front side of our house and kept one little patch of grass in the back. And we're actually doing a lot within our home in order to do our part to conserve. Rates are one avenue that a community has to encourage conservation, and the City of Santa Fe is a good example. Some of the highest rates in New Mexico are helping to encourage conservation, but the community on the whole here does a fabulous job at go back to natural sort of systems around their homes. We're doing something similar at our house.
Esteban, what are you doing to conserve water?
Well, let me put it in the context of something that Scott just raised. And this is in my home, but also in my community. I live in a rural community. I'm a part of a mutual domestic water consumers association. I'm on the board of that association. I've been advocating for conservation-based rates, increasing block rates. For a small community, we're one of the few around the state that I think actually have increasing block rates to encourage conservation by the community as a whole. It was something that we had to sell our community on, but once we did that, it's something that just people can embrace because it makes sense to them. It makes sense that if they're using water wastefully, they should have to pay for it. It creates an incentive for this, and so that's one of the things that I think is having an impact where I live.
Well, thank you both very much for being with us here today.
Great.
Thank you.
We've enjoyed it. Thank you.